Hey, this is Rob Anspach with eHeroes, and today's episode is 196. And this one's a little bit different because, I normally get entrepreneurs on here who, run a business or create a service. Well, this gentleman's service is helping you take an idea further. And what I mean by further is like all these books in the back. I want to take my idea of having these books further, which means I want to take them to Hollywood. And if you have a book or concept or a manuscript and you want to take it further, then the gentleman I'm going to introduce is the guy you need to speak to. And welcome, Jonathan Thompson, and thanks for being here.
No problem, Rob. Thank you for having me. And I love your books. That's the first thing I'm going to start with. I absolutely love the sarcasm in the books. Uh, growing up in England, sarcasm is the first language.
Yeah, I don't know how you escape that, but then you come to America and you're like, these people have no sense of humor.
I've run into that a time or two. There's actually a behind the scenes video from one of the proof of concept videos I was doing for a TV series where I made a joke, as the director, trying to get everyone in a good mood, and everyone just turns and looks at me. And I just look at them like, my humor is wasted on you colonists. And that's what got everyone. So there's actually a video out there on the behind the scenes of that particular moment somewhere.
And the funny thing is I've produced over 36 books over the last 9 years. And it was never something in the back of my mind that I thought, hey, I'm going to write this book. Yeah, we've all heard of J.K. Rowling, and she makes billions of dollars, but I never thought of the on that scale because my books were geared to business, not entertainment. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago with the whole idea of bringing these stories of Rob verses, you know, into a book form because I've always shared them on social media just to entertain people.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's one of the things a lot of people don't realize, Rob. I don't mean to cut you off, but like
no.
people who write books, who write informational things, who write about business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about it, the film industry, it's an industry. The
Mm-hmm.
movie business, it's a business. Being entertaining, having something that brings in an audience, I mean, there's a business aspect to it that a lot of people don't know.
Right.
So having books on business, having books that relate to that, you understand business. Now
Mm-hmm.
you've got entertaining books. Now you're in the entertainment business. The logical step
Right.
is to let people see that.
Yeah, I mean, as a marketer, I've always taught people how to utilize their content in a different aspect, whether it be, a podcast, whether it be a video, whether it be a transcript, or a blog article of some sort, but never take it to a point where, I had more eyeballs or a global audience. And I'm thinking that's just the evolution of what I'm doing anyway. You know, I want that global audience. We're not just talking, redneck comedy right here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We're talking global. And isn't that really what
Yeah,
we do as a marketer? We want more people looking at our stuff, But
definitely. And the humor in yours, the sarcasm, when I started reading it, it would do well in a UK market. It would do well in a Canadian market.
Mhm,
It would even do well in a German and Australian market
mhm.
because that level of sarcasm, that quick wit fire, it's there. You go through those, translate it to Italian. Italians love some of that kind of humor. So you've got varying countries that this would do quite well in. And then, of course, there's some that it really wouldn't. I don't see the call center capital of the world enjoying some of your comebacks.
Although I know some of them read my books because they call me out on, which is
Well, that's just taking notes.
yeah, which is kind of cool in this sense because I wrote Rob versus the Scammers just as a way to educate people on fighting back on these scams that the Visa Mastercard people, the solar companies, the electric rate scammers, and
Yep.
it's just sharing these stories out. But I do it in such a way that my sarcasm just oozes everywhere, and it just upsets these people, and they usually tell me to F off at the end of the call, which then I became the FU guy by default. And but and and it was like 3 books in, and these scammers are calling, and it was like they're reading out of my playbook, so they already knew. So I mean, I think it was the greatest honor when the scammers
which scammer are we using, and are we calling him?
Yeah, so it was kind of honored when the scammers start buying my books just to learn what I'm going to do. But you know, I think it all stems though from years of watching Seinfeld and some of the other classic shows from the 90s, the 80s and 90s. I mean,
Yeah, when dry humor was highly appreciated,
right.
you knew what you were getting when you got into it. Same idea as Britcoms. A lot of the variety show, like the Monty Python, the Fashion
Mhm.
Show, even Red Dwarf, things like that, the dry, quick wit that's presented.
Right.
Sometimes you have to have canned laughter for people to realize it's funny. Sometimes it's
Right.
just international translation.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, Faulty Towers is just a classic, and then I wish there was more episodes made, but the slapstick comedy
Yeah.
that used to exist that doesn't because everybody gets offended now, and I think laughter needs to come back, especially in this post-pandemic era. And the shows that are made today are not
Well,
awful.
one of the things that's happening now, um, audiences are shifting.
Yeah.
Um, Pre-pandemic, you were looking at that 26 to 45-year-old. That's your movie-going audience. Those are the people you appeal to. Those are the people that like a certain kind of story, a certain kind of character, and they get invested in the people, not so much the story. Since the pandemic, that audience has got younger. So
Mm-hmm.
now you're looking at that developing age, the early teens through to the mid 20s, are more the consumers now
Right.
versus the older people. So you've got to have something that they can grab hold of, they can see, but you still want to touch that older audience with the classic humor. You just
Mm-hmm.
got to bring it up to a modern day. And that's what I love about your stuff.
Yeah. And
Everyone gets those calls.
well, the back in 2015, I wrote a book called Lessons from the Dojo, and it was 101 kick butt ways to improve your life, business, and relationships. And there's just a sprinkling of sarcasm in that book, but every page was a new lesson. And that's what I liked
Hmm.
about that book because you could put the book down, come back to it the next day, pick up a new lesson, and it wasn't continuous. It wasn't a, cliffhanger. And that's what I wanted in these
Yeah.
these Rob versus books were short micro stories, but at the very end they give a lesson. So you know we're so fixated on storytelling that we want to give every little detail. Well, if you read my stories, there's very little detail, but it's more. There's two characters involved, and they're arguing, and one gets offended, and and it ends up.
Yeah.
So it takes it in a different direction, but it gives
Hmm.
people back that imagination where they can imagine how the story plays out, or even the characters involved. You know, so
Yeah.
it's
And
I think
that's
it's different than what people are used to.
people have got so used to being spoon fed everything.
Hmm.
Um, like some of the best, let's use thrillers and horrors as an example. The best ones out there are enough that let someone's imagination fill in the gaps. You
Hmm.
give them enough information because 90% of your audience, their mind will come up with something a lot creepier than what you're presenting on screen.
Right.
So having enough information that people can follow along, having enough information that they can fill in the blanks, you don't get a lot of that anymore. And it's starting to come back. And, you know, just the other day I was on with a writer who fantastic
Mhm.
screenplay, great action, great drama. You know, I know exactly which director I would like to see take it on because it's the kind of thing he would make. but they were so scene to scene to scene to scene to scene, they missed the one connector point. So when I was talking to them, I said, I want you to add an opening. Just this. Like, well, I want to keep some mystery in it. I'm not asking you to change anything, but add
Right.
this opening. What does that do? It lets the audience grab hold of that character. They know that character. They're emotionally invested in that character. Now everything else makes sense.
Right.
They're like, well, how long should it be? 3 pages. It doesn't need to be a lot, just enough.
Right. I mean, it's just the
And
same
that's,
as in
that's the kind
copywriting.
of thing developing a show with you for your books.
Right. With copywriting, that title needs to have that hook that draws them in. And so everything that I've learned and taught over the years is now coming together. But with you, you're taking that to a whole different level. You're saying, hey, now we got to take this to a visual audience, not just an audience that's reading your book, but they
Yeah.
need to be able to accept the concept that you have in the book and laugh at it while it's being on the screen.
Well, one of the advantages you have as well, and this goes for anyone out there that has books, that has something that they want to make, right now, I mean, it's always been a case in the film industry that people are gun shy with investments. They want to know they're making money.
Right.
If you have an existing intellectual property, a book, a podcast, a teleplay, something that you have an audience already, that's pre-existing intellectual property,
Mm-hmm.
you can convert that audience. It doesn't need to be millions and millions of people. If you have an audience, I mean, yes, it does need to be in the thousands because, that will convert.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be 900,000. You could get away with 10, 20, 30,000 people who've bought your book.
Mm-hmm.
You know your book does well. You know you have an audience. You know that you can go to a network, you can go to a station, you can go to a producer and say, I have an existing IP. I have something people will follow. That's pretty much guaranteed money in that investor's pocket.
Yeah. And with
And the reason they do that's a lot stronger now is in 2019, all these investors bought into the amazing products. Absolutely fantastic. Their plates were laden. They knew what they were having. It was an all-you-can-eat buffet.
mm-hmm.
The pandemic hit. No one was making anything.
Right.
All of that money sat there until the industry got reopened. So now they want IP. They want that existing. They want to make that money back that they lost 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Right. Yeah. And for me, when I every time I put out a new book, I always ask for reviews. And most people were like, well, why do you send the book out prior to launch? You're asking hundreds of people for reviews. I said, yeah, I'm letting them read the book so I can get reviews built up so that it helps me sell more books.
Yeah.
And they're
I
like,
mean, you
well,
ever seen a movie trailer?
right. Yeah. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
You know,
3 months before the movie comes out, here's a trailer. 2 months before it comes out, here's a second trailer.
mm-hmm.
The month before it comes out, here's an extended trailer. 2 weeks before it comes out, you can't turn around without hitting an advert for it.
Right.
And the movie hasn't even come out yet.
That's
Same
like,
principle.
that's like Top Gun was being advertised almost 3 years before it's finally coming out. And I'm like, wait a
Yep.
minute, didn't I see that movie already?
But the reason they did that is they were ready to release. They were
Yeah.
ready. But the amount of money they sank into that movie
Mm-hmm.
without a box office return,
Right.
it would hurt. It would really, really hurt. The movie's been ready.
Yeah.
But without, and that's the thing, international box office, one of the companies I'm working with now, one of their films has been released in every country except the US, because the
Wow.
US box office is what will make or break a film.
Mm-hmm.
And that for high impact, high dollar films, you have to have that US release, but you stage it, you stagger it, you scale it up. You take, like, if you want to do, let's say one of the films I'm working on now at 2.5 million. On a 2.5 million film, I'm not going to do a massive global release. That doesn't make any sense. Because for every cinema I put it in, you're looking at between $500 and $1,000. Every cinema. I put it in 4,000 cinemas in the US. There's $400,000, and no one's seen it yet. So you go to a province in, let's say, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You do a limited release in 100 cinemas. It's $100,000, but you make back from that $100,000 $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
You pay back your investors. You then take that rest, go to an Asian market, do a higher scale Asian release, take that money. That's why you can find these things pirated online before you ever see them in the cinema, because they've
Right.
been released in stages of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the movies my wife and I just watched, and it was recommended to us by someone from the UK. It was the Best Exotic Hotel, and I forget what it was, but it was a very funny movie. And I think it was made for a very limited budget and like 10 million bucks, but it made 100 and some
Yeah.
$1 million at the box office. And I guess they turned around and made a sequel about it. But, and same with Napoleon Dynamite. I just, like one of my worst movies I've ever seen, but it was like a limited
Yep.
budget and it made a lot of money. And so, there's there's always sleeper hits out there that are going to make money. And they're the ones that actually help
Yeah.
the studios turn around so they have the money for the big box.
Yeah.
Buster.
Independent film distribution is usually backed by the big companies. Without the independent film, they wouldn't have anything. They've got their stables. They've got their $700 million movies that will make them $2 billion. But you can't keep doing that every 6 years. You've got to have filler. So you get your movie made, you do a limited release, you go to one of the big festivals, one of the ones that actually matters.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Sundance, you get picked up at Sundance. Look at Coda. Coda won Best Picture at the Oscars. It was premiered at Sundance.
Mm-hmm.
I promise when they made that film, they weren't thinking, I'm going to win an Oscar.
Right.
They took it to Sundance for someone to buy it and show it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and that's what a lot of, especially the indie writers
Mm-hmm.
and indie filmmakers, right when the pandemic happened, everyone was screaming in the like social media boards, "It's our time! They're going to be coming to us." No, they're not. These big
No.
studios are going to go to the people who've made them billions of dollars in the past and say, "I'm hurting.
Yeah.
This hurt. What can I do?"
Right.
The only
Yeah.
way to separate yourself from "It's my time. This is me now. Yay! I'm an amazing screenwriter," and actually getting paid is have a plan.
Yeah.
Integrate the business side of it. How are you going to use incentives? How are you going to get your money back before anyone's seen this? What's your marketing plan? What's your financial structure? Who are you in talks with? All of these things. And a lot of people, especially new filmmakers, don't appreciate that. They don't understand that's where you make your money. That's how you get from I'm spending $250 with my phone and making hit and run guerrilla films to Michael Bay just blew up an aeroplane because it was cheaper than making it CGI.
Right.
Having that business development, having that strategy, and that's what I do a lot with new filmmakers is I help them cover that gap from being an amazing creative to being a creative who understands how it makes them money.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who say, "Oh, well, I'm not interested in this making money. I just want it out there and seen," without that plan, it's never going to get seen. You put it up on YouTube and then spend the rest of your life advertising on YouTube.
Right. Yeah. It's. I mean, I guess if you want to do that, more power to you. But
Yeah,
you got to have a plan, and for me, it was how can my books do better? I mean, people enjoy reading the books, but how can they? There's a lot of people. I mean, believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that don't read, and it kills me. You know, uh,
yeah.
reading's not hard. Reading's not difficult. In fact, my books are probably the easiest books you're ever going to read. You know, I just
They're a very quick, easy read. I do
I
enjoy them.
yeah, and I just never wanted to write a technical book. I never wanted to write something that bored the piss out of people. I wanted to make it easy, and I wanted to make it thin enough that they could carry it with them, throw it in a purse, put it in your back
Hmm.
pocket. And and in 2 or 3 hours they're done and they can go on with their life, you know.
Yeah,
And that was my
and
plan all along.
that's something that developing the TV show with it. It's going to be those easy digestible things. It's not going to be like the 45-minute to hour and a half episodes like The Witcher or
Hmm.
some of the things that are on the streaming networks. Make it something that's digestible on regular terrestrial television.
Hmm.
Terrestrial television still has an international audience,
Hmm.
and everyone's trying to hit the streamers. Everyone's, yay, let me get this on Netflix, and I've made it. AMC made The Walking Dead. They're still making shows.
Right.
NBC, they're still making. Fox is still making. They all have their own streaming platform, but they also have terrestrial television. They're still buying content.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's all part of the things I talk about with people is where do you want to go? How do you want it to get there? Because there's a different approach for how you do things. If you want to go studio, then you have to appeal to a studio exec. If you want to go independent, you have to appeal to the financier.
Hmm.
Those are two completely different presentations.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, what's your process? I mean, because, I approached you and said, hey, look, what can I do differently with this book? Where can I go? But,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that you're getting hundreds of requests all the time. So, how do you decide,
The first
where
the
your
first thing I
focus is?
do, my process is if if someone approaches me and just says, "Hey, Jonathan, I've got a project," or "Hey, how are you?" I'll usually reply, talk to them a little bit, see what they've got going on, where they want to go, and then I'll do a free call. You know,
Mhm.
because and this is before I've even seen the project, because I want to know the creator. I want to know how you envision it, where you go. If you're someone that takes notes well, or if you're someone that just wants to be told you've got a great idea, let's make money at it. Those are very different people.
Mhm.
So I do a call, discuss who the creator is, a little bit about the project, and if it's something that I think I can help with, then I offer a few suggestions, discuss the package of what they can do, how they want to develop it, where they want it to go, and then from there, I take them on as a client. We break down. I'll do one-on-one interviews, talks with them about every step. So developing the characters. These are the characters that you have. This is how to make them cinematic.
Mhm.
Um, like right now, there was an article in Variety about the lack of neurodivergent characters, and I'm going to sound like a complete tool. Most neurodivergent problems are not cinematic.
Right.
They're not. So you have to develop a story that propels that character. Then you also have to make the character fire back and propel the story. You can't just say, hey, this guy's got, let's say he's on the autism scale. So this guy has Asperger's. Let's write a whole story about that. You've got to write a story that ensnares the character. Then the character drives that.
Right.
So that's part of the process is getting people to understand because the books. How many times have you read a book and people have read a book, then watched a movie and went, "Oh, they left so much out." Different audience.
Right.
You've got, and that's part of the process is breaking down how a movie or television audience react, what they're after, how you approach it, and once you've got that, you develop the story, you develop the series, you develop all of the different pitch materials, and again, this is all stuff. There's guidance through it. Um, you do this, you do this, you do this. Here's this, and why.
Mhm.
That's the bit a lot of people miss out
Yeah.
is the why. Because I can tell you, put this in there, put this in there, put this in there, put this in there, and you put in there. You get an appointment with an investor. You get a pitch meeting with a network. You walk in and they ask you about something that I told you to put in, and you look there and go, you know, that deer in the headlight. I hate that moment. I want people to understand why questions are asked, the way they're asked, and the best responses to get the most impact.
Right.
Because film industry, it's a relationship.
Hmm.
You know, you hear the phrase all the time, and it's complete and utter rubbish. I usually use stronger language, but I know this is an interview. Um, it's uh, it's rubbish from the back end of a bull. Um, it's it's not who you know; it's who knows what you know.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you approach Steven Spielberg, you could be his best friend for life and go, "Hey, man, I want to write this screenplay and direct this movie," and he'll say, "Oh, do you know how?" No, but I want to do it.
Hmm.
Versus someone who knows Steven Spielberg and says, "Hey, buddy, I've put these short films together, or I've written this and it's got some nice traction to it. I want to direct. Will you help me? Do you know how? Well, I've done these little bits and pieces here. Okay, let's give you a shot at big time." It's not who you know, it's who knows what you know. And
Right.
my job is to make sure you know what. So when you go to these people and they say, "Why should I talk to you?" Would you like me to list it alphabetically or numerically? The reasons why you need to talk to me right now. So that's where my process takes people. I don't take projects on as an agent or a manager. I don't take clients on to represent them to the masses. That's a whole nother skill
Hmm.
set. I like to get people ready for pitch meetings, to talk to executives, to talk to agents and managers. Agent manager comes up and says, "I like what you did here. You know, how did you know this is what we needed?" You know,
Right.
that's that's what I do. Is I like to work as that gap between I have an idea and I have a network.
Right.
So
And there was a lot of questions that I had because, hey, I have this book or set of books, series of
yeah,
books, and I know that my readers love them. I know that they can't wait to see me write more of these books. But what my goal is I want to entertain them a little bit more. I want them to see, hey, yes, you were the original, recipients of this book, and because of you, it's going to be, it could be a TV show,
yeah, and
and and
that's
one,
something you put in that pitch material
right.
is I'm taking this to a network. Why should I care?
Hmm.
Because I've got 7 books in this series. The age ranges are this age to this age. I have this many people who've commented on this, including quotes, you know, and I'm a for you specifically,
Hmm.
I'm a marketing expert.
Right.
You're an expert in that field. I will handle the marketing for this film. I will put that marketing strategy in place. I can get these audiences globally, and that's part of the package I'm presenting.
Hmm.
Now, they're not just picking up your show. They're not just saying, "Well, we like the screenplay. Let's take the screenplay. Here's a check. Go away." They're saying, "We like what you bring to the table, not just the show. You know, do I want to take the show or do I want to take Rob with the show to help the writers, understand his character, his books, his things? Oh, and by the way, we're going to hire your company to do the marketing because that's what you do."
Right. You
You
know.
approach it as I'm giving you all of this, not just a screenplay. Because if you walk up and go, "Here's a screenplay, give me money." I've worked at studios where people have done that.
Right.
And the concepts, I've had some amazing concepts come through, absolutely fantastic. And you give someone the money, you buy the rights for the screenplay, you go to another writer and say, "Rewrite that. I like the concept, make the script work."
Hmm.
You never want that to happen as a writer.
Right.
You never want that to happen as a creative endeavor. You want to see your vision, and that's part of what I do. Is I help people get over that hump of it has to be made my way or not at all. It has to be like this because this is my genius. Okay, that's great. When you get in the studio, once you've got the budget, you can make it your way,
Hmm.
but you have to get there first.
Yeah, I think I was it a video I watched on Sylvester Stallone, and he says there's no way that Rocky could be remade or made in society today
No.
if he had to start over. He
Yeah.
says because the studios don't want independent nobodies to be stars of their show. You know,
Yeah.
you
And
and
now things like that happen. They
right.
do, but it's one or two people a generation.
Hmm.
Sylvester Stallone, that will not happen again.
Right.
You talk about music industry. Justin Bieber did some YouTube videos. Someone saw them and went, "Wow, what he had wasn't a music talent. What he had was a massive audience that someone said, I can sell that and make money on this kid."
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's, yes, it happens, but basing your entire creative career on if I make something, people will come,
Hmm.
will never get you to the point that every network is calling you saying, hey, let's work on this. Hey, let's work on this.
Right. And
You know,
that's one thing I've always taught my clients is build the dreams is a lie. Build it and they will come. Doesn't work. You have to make it work. You have to go out there and market. You have to go out there and tell them, hey, I have this thing that I think will help you.
yeah.
And this is why. And it's no like and trust, but also making them feel safe.
Well, it's like
So if,
as a marketing man, you understand this concept
right.
that social media right now, the way the world is now, you can build million people audiences in a matter of months with correct application of different processes.
Right.
You give someone something, you create a website and you have a landing page where people can sign up for newsletters on development of your project.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a network. Why should I follow you? There's 100,000 emails of people that want to see this.
Right. Yeah.
You create that audience, even if there's no actual product there yet. You create the buzz, you create the excitement, you build that audience. So when you get that call, when you do that presentation, you, you're not just bringing a script, you're bringing power
Mm-hmm.
behind that script. You're bringing guaranteed revenue.
Right. Yeah, and I think people forget that. They just say, "Hey, well, I have this idea. Let's see if I can make $1 million or $10 million, whatever the amount is." But
Yeah,
there's no sustenance behind it. There's no meat and potatoes. There's nothing. But that
yeah.
seems like that's what society is all about today. Hey, I'm just going to take the lazy man's approach and see what happens. No, you got to put the work in.
Well, to give you an example of one of my clients, she's created several shows and films, and I helped, tweak a few bits here and there, helped her get the business side of things organized. She's got a call with AMC on two of her TV shows, and one of them, I said, we need to create that initial buzz. We need to create something visually. She's friends with the owner of Blood Moon Comics, so together she took her pilot, turned it into a comic, hired an artist, and the comic's coming out in July. It's Nine Circles, martial law, and that it's in development departments, it's in negotiations with major networks because she created something that's going to bring in an audience. There's something there. Another option is graphic novels. Graphic novels, a comic book has to be pre-ordered, even by comic book stores to get it on the shelves.
Mhm.
Graphic novels you can put in Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, yada yada yada. So it's a visual medium. So creating something that people can hold and see.
Mhm.
A good example of that is Laura Olympus, Webtoons, the app Webtoons. It's a webcomic
Mhm.
based on the story of Hades and Persephone. And my wife came across this thing, stumbled across it. It's got like millions and millions of downloads and views. It's currently been turned into a graphic novel, and they're in negotiations to turn it into an animation.
Mm.
And it's been 2 years since she started that as a web
Right.
comic.
Yeah. And with anything that you guys do as entrepreneurs, realize that there's time involved. There's a
Yes.
process, and you can't rush that process. So, if Jonathan says to me, Rob, hey, this thing is going to take 2 years, maybe more, to see that vision become something more, then I have to trust him on that time frame and say, okay, but these are the steps in between that we're going to take to kind of make sure that that time frame actually happens. But I think too many
Yes.
entrepreneurs give up after a few months, a year, and they said it's just too long. I don't want to wait this long.
As creatives, especially on like first time developing in the audio, visual, theatrical, television, 3 years is a basics. If you start with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you start with books, so you can accelerate that timeline a little. 3 years from the moment you start writing to the moment it's on screen, you're looking at that long. We brought up Top Gun earlier,
Mm-hmm.
Maverick. The film's been made, but
Mm-hmm.
no one's seen it yet.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of fluctuations. But the bonus to working in this industry is, as the first stage creator, as the writer, as a developer, you can start a project, then you hand it off to the production team.
Mm-hmm.
And then the studio calls you and says, hey, we like what you did with this. It's in production right now. What else have you got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's what I can do for you. We like you. We don't like this. Can you rewrite this one for me? Yes. And then you see, after that first sale, after that first successful sale, it doesn't even have to get made. After that first successful sale, you go from here to here. Managers, agents, producers, they all start looking because you just sold. Then you go to here because the managers and agents start calling you and saying, hey, I will hook you up. You're doing well. You made money on your own. Now let me do this so I can get 20% of whatever you make.
Although if they call me, I might treat them as a scam call.
Yes. Oh, that'd be brilliant. I want that one to have its own book. But I mean, that's what agents do.
Mm-hmm.
Agents make money by making sure a sellable asset is sold.
Right.
You have to prove you're a sellable asset before you can hook an agent.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm an up and coming. Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need an agent. You need a manager. You need someone that gets you from up and coming to made it.
Mm-hmm.
You need the agent to take you from made it to filmmaking legend.
It was funny because when I put out the fifth book, Rob versus the Wackadoos, I sent out a bunch of them copies to people to read, and my friend Brandon, he emails me back. He goes, "I'm on a plane from Dallas to LA. I'm laughing my ass off reading this book. Everybody's looking at me, and I almost pissed myself because I was laughing so hard I couldn't get to the bathroom." And to me, that was the moment, that everything I've ever done, you know, kind of made sense. Yeah, I'm laughing at him, laughing at me, or at my book. But to me, I that right there said you have a winner, and that was.
Yes.
I like stories like that. You know.
Something I like to see as well is when you take quotes from things, and you're the first one that created that quote, and all of a sudden it's appearing everywhere.
Right.
When I was at college, we used to have a few beverages between classes, during classes, and after classes. And I used to always say the comment, there's too much blood in my alcohol system. And about 2 years later, a friend of mine bought a shot glass and presented it to me because I collected shot glass, and it had that phrase on it. I'm like,
Yeah. I mean.
But something I would like to, tell everyone: keep a notebook with you.
Right.
I mean, I keep mine with me at all times.
Darth
Yeah,
Vader.
yeah. The dark side wins, man. You Smartphones, you can take pictures of things. You can do a voice recording.
Right.
Hey, I don't have time to pull out a notebook. Hit record, say something into it, put it down, go back to it later. Because that thing that was an amazing idea that you'll remember when you get home and you sit at your keyboard and you're ready to start typing, it's gone.
Yeah.
And the best idea you never made, someone else will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think about 15 years ago, I started using the expression "no good deed goes unpunished."
Yep.
My wife hates it, but every time we're watching a TV show and someone says that, she just looks at me and cringes.
Yeah. But every time you have an amazing idea, it's the best thing on the planet.
Yeah.
My wife is a costumier and fashion designer, costume designer,
Mhm.
as well as a graphic artist. And we were designing a line of superhero suits, three-piece suits based on different superheroes. So you had the Superman S built in through the tie and the jacket and the waistcoat.
Mhm.
You had a grey suit with black accents for a Batman suit, female one pieces for Wonder Woman and things like that. And we were doing it for fun. I mean, those things are copyrighted. That they're iconic imagery, and it was just a fun experiment.
Mhm.
5 years later, I was online, and one of those, going out of business, buy our stock things came up, and that's what they had with those exact things. And I'm like, proof.
Mhm.
The thing you thought you couldn't make or you wanted to make for fun, but never got around to it, someone will make it. So why not you?
That's right. Yeah. So it's always try to figure out what your idea is and expand on it. And I have friends that are copyright attorneys. I have friends that are business attorneys, and it's always good to check with them, to see, hey, does someone else have that idea? But if they
Yep.
don't, try to go full force with it because you never know how far you can get with it.
Well, there's a quote out there right now. I'm trying to remember who said it. Who said there's nothing new in Hollywood.
Hmm.
There are no new stories, but you never told it. So tell your story your way.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
great as a creative, but the story will never get made or seen if you don't have a plan of action.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean,
where consultants like me come in, people who've worked as directors, worked as producers, worked as actors, people who've been in with some of the big companies, even on the sidelines, and just watching what goes on, taking the notes, going, huh, I, I made my first ever piece in 2000,
hmm
2001, that kind of time frame. Attack of the, was it Attack of the Clones? One of the Star Wars had just come out, and they had a bunch of Jedi, and we decided to do a tribute to George Lucas, and we had 30 of our friends with the Force Effects lightsabers, and I
hmm
choreographed a 30-person fight scene, and we filmed it, and it was a horrible mess, but we had a great time doing it. You know? So you know, moments like that.
Right.
That's where I started in film. I'd been doing theater since I was 5,
hmm
you know. So you've got all of this experience. You find people with that experience. Tap into it. I mean, it might cost you a couple of dollars,
Right.
but if it's experience that you don't have, it's knowledge that you don't have, it's an investment.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You're
and and the thing
investing
is,
in their knowledge to make it your knowledge.
right. And yeah, I mean, I try to pay people that have more experience than I do in certain aspects because it's going to get me further. I
Yes.
when I first wrote my first book, I shopped it around. Nobody wanted it because it was very simple. They wanted technical stuff, and so that I created my own publishing company. And let me tell you, that was a pain in the rear. I had to learn everything about publishing, and it was stuff that I didn't really want to know. But once I discovered how to do it, now I publish books for other people. But
Yep.
I, there is a problem though is I don't want to learn everything, and I think everybody out there
Yes.
doesn't want to learn everything. So you have to decide if you want to do this by yourself and spend years of your life trying to do it yourself, or hire someone that's already done it and can overcome that learning curve for you to get you where you want to be.
Yeah. Also, I say my wife's a graphic artist and a costume designer,
Hmm.
and I am really, really great at angry stick figures. I can draw angry stick figures all day long, you know, and I can take that angry stick figure and hand it to my wife, and and she'll doodle it up, and I'll get beautifully rendered scenes. I'll get the costumes exactly the way I want them. Find someone that's better at what you want to do, let them do it.
Yeah.
Observe.
Yeah.
Find someone who's better at where you have your shortfallings. As a director, I understand lighting design, sound design, costume design, you know, all of the different elements that go into making it. Am I a designer on any of these things? Oh no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
I walk up to my director of photography, and I did this with Starquake, the proof of concept we did. Great guy out of Atlanta. I said, Chance, I need this. I want this feel from this film, this colors from this film, this kind of lighting, this kind of depth. This is where I need. And we had a couple of Zoom calls, like me and you doing here for the interview. And I showed up to set, and he had the entire thing lit and ready. He says, "This what you wanted?" A little tear came down my face, and I'm like, "I love you, man." He was like, "Yeah, well, we're not that close."
Yeah, and that's what I do for my
So
books. I mean, I kind of have a concept, but I give them to my graphic artist, and he runs wild. And he used to just send me 3 or 4 different designs. Now he sends me one. He goes, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Great, let's go." And it's gotten to the point where he
yeah,
knows exactly what I want. You know.
yeah.
Well,
On my storyboard artist, guy named Ryan Chrissy out of Lexington, South Carolina. Fantastic storyboard artist. I mean, he went to SCAD for sequential drawing. Me and him will get on the call, we'll get on the phone, we'll start laughing. We'll talk about a script, and we'll just talk.
mm-hmm.
We'll go through it, and I'll tell him where I'm thinking, and then a little bit later, I get sent a page with what we talked about, and everything, including all of the camera movements and things that I've talked about and put in my director's script. And then I hand that off to my camera crew and say, I need this action to happen on the screen
Mm-hmm.
because I draw and do stick figures.
So how does my audience get a hold of you? Where do they go?
Um, Obviously, you can get a hold of me on LinkedIn, but I actually have a website. It's just my name, so JonathanThompson.org. And that's primarily set up for the consultancy. But I also use that if someone wants to hire me for a director, if someone wants to, shoot ideas back and forth. I mean, I don't mind mentoring people. I did that when I had live theater. I used to bring in people who wanted to learn directing
Mm-hmm.
and then do a guest director program. So I'd teach them how to direct.
Mm-hmm.
So anything creative, anyone that's got a, hey, I need help with this, or is this idea market ready? Is it viable? Just go to my website, JonathanThompson.org.
There you go. And this was great. I mean, I learned a lot about the proper steps. I learned about how to take that idea a little bit further. And so hopefully one of these days, guys, that if you've read my Rob versus series, you'll see it on TV. That is the ultimate goal. And until then, just continue listening to these awesome interviews. And if you just joining in now, this is episode 196. So go back and binge listen to all the rest of them. And when you're done, then you can contact me or Jonathan. So yeah, you'll be
Yeah, and
listening for a while.
if you haven't read Rob's books, the Rob verses, go out and read them, buy them, leave a review. So when we go to the TV station, we can say there's this much audience for it.
Yeah, and if you haven't gotten them, just go to robversus.com, and that'll actually take you to the Amazon, my channel, and you can buy it on print, Kindle, and it's only available in English, but I've Japanese people have bought it. Italians have bought it. I mean, anywhere Amazon is, you can get it. So get it today. Get all 5 of them. Actually, there's 2 more coming out, so you'll have 7 soon. Anyway, have a great day, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.